From the liberal Northeast comes a lone voice of truth. Honest commentary in dishonest times. Think deeper with Juan Newsom. This is the Cure Radio Program. This is the Cure.
Hello. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kat Hernandez, and joining me is Mr. Juan Newsom. Say hi, Juan.
Hey, Kat.
How
Are you
doing?
watching? Are you looking at? Did you see the debates?
Oh my! The highlight of the fly, totally the fly. As soon as it landed on his head, I was like, "No! Swat the fly! Swat the fly!"
I don't think he could even feel it, to be
He
honest.
couldn't feel it. And you know what's so funny? Like, Pence is so chill. Like, the fly didn't even move. It was like, oh, yeah, this is like a cozy little spot on his head. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
move, fly, move. How did it get there with that barrier? How did it get there?
I know. It must have flew from above. It had to fly like from above somewhere.
It was the fly from the Lord. You know what was funny about that specific 2 minutes was while Kamala was talking, all I could think about was him swatting the fly. That whole 2 minute segment went on and on. I don't have a clue what she was talking about. I didn't hear anything that she was saying. All I was on was the fly,
Oh
which
man.
goes to show how important her thoughts were that night.
Well, people thought she won the debate. Well,
Who?
liberals anyway.
Oh, please. There's no freaking way. The woman was giggling through her lies. That giggle is like how you compensate for being extremely ill and unprepared with what the other person says. Hillary, that's her MO too. When she doesn't know what to say and she can't justify what the other person, like facts that the other person is throwing at her, she'll smile all weird and giggle.
Yeah.
Is like her body's way of saying like, oh snap, they just put me in a corner and I got nothing to come back. Like you could see the wheels are turning in her head. Like, what's my comeback? My
It's
comeback.
also
What do I say?
it's also an optics play too, because
Well, yeah.
that body language, so it's an optics play. They could use that for real footage on the mainstream media playbacks and stuff like that. So Democrats have kind of mastered that optics thing.
She
Pence was,
mastered anything. I think that she was caught in a situation where because she of something quick enough. Like this was obviously something she didn't prepare for him to say.
yeah.
So all she could do was kind of giggle it. Oh my gosh, that's not even true. Not even true. Like, are you kidding me? You are in a
hmm
debate with a serious man. He is putting facts at you. He wants you to respond, and your response. And the funny thing is, the segment afterwards, on Fox, Donna Brazil was on,
Oh yeah.
and they were talking about her making her demeanor and the weird giggling, the side eye, and Donna Brazil like, oh, she's not you. She's not married to you. Like she's not your wife, to Karl Rove.
hmm
And she took issue with the fact that they were pointing out the faces she was making during the debate. And she's like, that's just how we express ourselves. And what I was like, no, actually it isn't. You can't have it both ways. You can't be a serious contender for vice president and also potentially, given the nominee Biden, the next president of the United States, should he not be live long enough to fulfill his 4 years, you can't say you want to be a serious contender and then also want people to be okay with you giggling like a clown because you have no retort to your opponent. That doesn't
hmm
win.
Yeah. Brazil was also like, I was flipping back and forth between Fox, and CNN. And between both Donna Brazile and Van Jones, I don't know who's more delusional, but they both basically said that, in terms of her solidifying herself as a VP candidate, that she passed the bar, like she crossed that threshold. And I'm thinking, like, how did she do that when she didn't answer any doggone questions?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, was the bar set by Biden? Because then it's not that high a bar that she needs to reach. Like the
that's
next VP
true.
for the Republican Party, if you're coming after Pence, like he set that bar extremely high. I can
Yeah,
see Pence 1000% being a 2024 presidential candidate
I vote for her.
in an instant. In an instant. The fact is that Harris was unable to outshine any of her Democratic opponents.
Hmm.
So she was completely out of her league when it came to Pence. And it showed 100%. It showed.
He also nailed her on her criminal justice record, specifically when she was AG in California. He also nailed them on the COVID response. I thought, look, for his COVID questions, it's gonna be somewhat tainted because of the coverage that they've gotten over COVID. I thought he
Right.
gave the best response that he could, but he also pointed out that Joe Biden plagiarized their response efforts in his campaign promises. So I
And
found that pretty
it's
interesting.
like, well, that's just Joe. Like, that's just what Joe does, plagiarize again and again. They are building this narrative or trying to build this narrative that Trump and his administration had no plan for the future of the country, when in fact, they came up with a response that no other president
Hmm.
would have even been able to think of doing. The fact that he used his contacts in the private sector, he mobilized manufacturing, he mobilized different companies within the United States for our own response. And then he
Hmm.
combined that with pharmaceutical companies. He got the FDA to loosen up some of their restrictions to allow these pharmaceutical companies to go forward with the testing, to go forward with all of the vaccines and all things that would have taken, first of all, Democrats would have never thought of this. They would have
Yeah,
never even have
exactly.
imagined the response. And then she tries to use that against him. The fact that he was able to mobilize the military, our own National Guard, in order to get equipment, like logistically get the PPE and stuff dispensed throughout the entire country, something that the governors themselves could not do, even though that is part of their responsibility. Every
Yeah.
single state has a plan for such pandemics, for illnesses, and how they need in their own state. These governors, mostly Democratic governors, were incapable of doing so. And because they couldn't do it, they blamed Daddy Trump, and all of
Hmm.
a sudden, did we forget the naval ships that were off the coast of California and New York in order to
Yep.
help respond to the issues? And
He
what
built
happened?
hospitals. Yeah.
Absolutely. And who did that? That was our military personnel. We did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then this is a point used against Trump, where no other president would have even thought to mobilize our own military this way. But because he has such a 1,000-foot view of what's happening in the country and how to get things moving, he brought people into his team that had such specific skills and then relied on them to come
Hmm.
up with a proper plan on how to address this in the most immediate and efficient way possible. And they hate that he was able to do it. They hate it.
Yeah. It would have taken the average president like a term to do what he did in those few months. And you notice how with Trump, he's surrounded by true successful free
Mm-hmm.
marketeers.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Mnuchin and Kudlow. He's surrounded by people that are competent. Ben Carson. I
Yes.
mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's why his administration has been very much effective. If you're not doing your job, you're fired, just like in the private sector. He makes no bones about that. Look at Scaramucci.
Oh, he is such a sad anti-Trumper. I mean, like, go get a life, dude. You got yourself fired in blame. It's like, come on, guy. Like, go away.
Well, yeah, but so I mean, they've been very much effective, and I think to this testament, you had to have a guy like a Trump who understood logistics, who understood the private sector to get something like this done. The average politician, it would have taken them forever. And
Just
he,
don't have the background, the skills, the depth of knowledge on how industries work. If you
hmm
look at they want to agriculture. Oh, California is on fire and whatever. All of these issues had to arise, but he addressed that. One thing that I
hmm
Pence would have shot back at her, and given the debate style, he wasn't able to do so. But one thing I wish he would have said to her was like, yeah, the farmers, we prepared when we knew that they were going to be hit financially by, the tariffs on China.
hmm
And now we're in a much stronger position, and our our produce didn't go down. Our production went up. And
yeah,
because he did that, he was able to mobilize food banks and mobilize like all of these different groups to feed people during the shutdown. Could you
hmm
imagine having to rely on China for food or Mexico for food? It would have been a pandemic on top of, the biggest how do you have 50 million people out of work and now still under lockdown in a lot of places, and we're going down to single digit unemployment numbers?
yeah, yeah. Currently, right now, the unemployment rate is at 7.9%, right at the same point in 2000 and right around the same point in 2012 where Barack Obama was seeking reelection. At the time, the unemployment rate was roughly the same. So on the outside end, it looks pretty good for Trump in terms of the economy. When you look at some of the polling, especially Gallup, which I kind of trust more than most of the Gallup, and I like Rasmussen too. Um, when it comes to the economic trust, Trump is winning. When it comes to the issues, handling the economy, foreign relations, Trump is winning with Biden. So, some of this polling has to be really off, or either they're oversampling Democrats and they're loading biases into some of these questions.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know why the polls are not favoring Trump a little bit more, or even having them equal. Maybe I could trust it. But at this point, they weren't correct the first time around
hmm
with this president. And I highly doubt that they're correct this time around. And they're
Yep.
just creating a situation where um, people who listen and really trust what they're saying, they're just going to be extremely disappointed. And the only rationale they're going to be able to come up with is that he cheated and he stole the election,
Yeah.
because the media is not being honest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just a fact.
Yeah. I'll give you an example, Kat. When you look at Pennsylvania, now supposedly Trump is behind 10 points in Pennsylvania. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at the voting registration is up on the Republican side. There's been roughly 110,000 more Republican voters since 2015. There's been 42,000 less Democratic voters since 2015. So something's going on with these polls. If Republican votership is up in Pennsylvania, this is just one state now. I can name several.
Well, I can actually give one reason why. If you're doing polling, right? Doing
hmm
polling on likely voters, people who voted before. Now, if you have numbers up where they haven't been before, you're not polling those people because they've not voted before.
Yeah.
So you can't determine that they would likely vote. So you have a whole group of folks who maybe even some of them are registered as Democrats, maybe they never voted before or whatever, and you're not polling them. So how could you trust the accuracy of any of this? You don't even know who the polling group really is.
Mm, that's true. I know there was this big thing back in 2016 where some of the NBC pollers were like former Clinton staffers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So,
this is what they do. They create the narrative for you. So if they tell you the lie long enough, it's obviously true. They just
hmm
keep saying it. And when they're all doing the same exact thing, it's like all of them are saying it. All of them are saying it. Everyone else saying it. It has to be true. Look, they put up a spreadsheet here. I had a girl put up a fact check, right?
hmm
Telling me that Trump currently has 26 accusations from women of sexual assault. Okay. From
hmm
2016. I was like, well, can you show any kind of evidence? Like just one piece of evidence? Like we've gone through 4 years of disparaging this man and nobody has been able to come up with anything valid.
hmm
And she posts a link to the courts in New York, and it is against Epstein.
hmm
So I'm like, did you even bother to read the link, the information in the link that you sent me? Like,
Somebody take her voter registration card away, please.
please, please. You fact check me with false information. Like, it's not even against Trump, it was against Epstein. Like, what are you what are you even talking about? But this is
Oh
who you're
God.
fighting with. You ask them to give you evidence. Another big talking point. The parties flipped. You ask them to give you evidence and they say, "Well, this is just known." Obviously, if you learned history, you would know this. And they're very confident in the learned history. I'm like, "All right, well, where can I Google that link? Where can I find that video? Where can I find
Yeah.
your resource?"
It
Well,
never
I shouldn't
happened.
no, I shouldn't have to do your homework.
It never
Like, "Oh,
happened.
okay."
It
It's
never happened.
absurd. It's
It never
absurd.
that never happened anyway.
No.
I mean, it's just crazy. The thing is,
The people who were
the Democrats changed their strategy. That's really what happened.
right. It's no longer global warming, it's climate change.
hmm
Oh, okay. So we're not getting hotter. The climate's just always changing. Like, oh, okay. The new strategy.
It's no longer segregation. It's integration with socialism.
Oh my word. Hey guys, if you are just tuning in, this is Juan and Kathy Talk Radio. We are discussing all of the crazy stuff that has been going on this 2020, given these VP debates and Trump with COVID, and just the overall climate of where we are in race relations, in politics, in today.
hmm
Tons and tons of fun.
So going back to the debate for just 1 second, Kat, I thought Pence performed better than Trump did in the debates. Definitely.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can see that Pence is a professional. You can see that he obviously knows his stuff.
hmm
He's not working off the cuff, and he's very measured and precise,
hmm
where like the hatchet man, he comes in wild and just chopping heads off everywhere.
Yep, yep,
Pence is
yep.
definitely the surgeon. He's very strategic. He's making the appropriate cuts in the appropriate places. He's not butchering her, but he did slice her up to a
Death
point
of a thousand
she
cuts.
was kind of like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He made her look incompetent in what she was saying.
Yeah. That's yesterday Trump was on Rush Limbaugh And did you see what he said about Iran? he said,
No, I didn't get to see it. I was
he
working.
he dropped the F bomb. he dropped the
No,
F bomb on. yeah.
no. Oh man.
They were talking about Iran and how Iran was threatening us, and he said, "You know what? They better not f with us." He said it, or we're gonna do something far worse than what they think that we're gonna do. It's just he dropped the f bomb live on Rush. I was like, man, Pence heavy. They need a Pence to balance this guy out.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what it is? So I had posted page a thing from Russell Brand, I think is his name, the British,
Yeah,
and I don't really too much, but he actually took the time to analyze Trump's approach and really talk about why it's so effective.
yeah,
Because a lot of the media will just be like, his supporters are just racist and he's speaking to their racism in them. They dismiss it as, oh, we're all a bunch of buffoons. We all are incapable of understanding the complexities of what's happening in the world. Like, we have no merit. We're just following along like puppets and fools. No, no. We know what's happening. We knew what was happening during Bill Clinton. We knew what was happening during Bush. We knew what was happening during the entire Obama debacle. We knew what was happening every step of the way. We just got tired of seeing the same old approach with no solutions, no changes. It didn't matter who you put into office. But now we see this person come in, totally different approach with a totally different mindset. Like the innovation that Trump has come up with on how to solve our issues is so transformative for
hmm
the next generation coming up.
yeah,
Whereas the solutions that everybody else had are the same old, same old, same old that didn't work before. So
yeah,
and he is strong enough in his own personal character and believes in his gut and his enough that when the supposed experts of all these issues come
yeah,
at him with something and it doesn't sound quite right, of course he's going to push back at them. And this is what we want.
yeah.
Do we know that his personality and his talk is extreme? Absolutely. Do we
hmm
believe what he's saying is fact and truth and exactly verbatim how it comes out of his mouth? No. Coming from New York, I know the swagger. I know the
hmm
rhetoric. I
He's from
know,
Queens.
yeah, I know why he's talking how he's talking and to who he's trying to get. He's
hmm
not dumb. Everybody wants to put him off as dumb. And finally, this guy sat down and took piece by piece and was able to articulate exactly what his move is. And that is the sign of someone who is more genius than dumb.
hmm
He's
hmm
able to use all methods that they use against us for his own bit.
Yeah, that's true. I had you're not the only one that said this. A couple of months ago on The Cure, this was during the primaries. I had Dwayne Stovall. He was a Senate candidate, and I had him as a guest. And he's a Texan. He's a true Texan, like a sixth generation Texan. And he said early on he knew Trump would win. He said he knew Trump would win, and he said just by the way that he stood down the entire Republican field, he's like Trump's a street guy. He's not just an
Yep.
ordinary. He's not just a billionaire. He's very educated, but he's very much a street guy. Another thing about Trump is he's kept promises. That's something that hardly any politician does, keep promises. And then when you talk about some of the out of box things that he's done, when you look at the Jerusalem move, I know we talked about that in the past. When you look at the Space Force, and when you look at his Middle East peace plan that he's been nominated by three different individuals for Nobel Peace Prizes for, stuff like that, thinking out of the box. His Middle East peace plan, I actually read the white paper, Cat, and it's pretty ingenious. They skillfully weaved
Mhm.
they skillfully weave like economic policy into that as well. So there are some economic incentives for that, and that's another reason why the deals are being signed. The Mideast peace deals are being signed because he's carefully woven foreign policy and economic policy. Now, in the past, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they would kind of keep those things separate.
Yeah.
Trump, he put them together, and I think it was really just him and Kushner and Mike Pompeo. I mean, they were
Yes.
just ingenious the way they just worked things out. So this
Their
president thinks out of the box.
exactly. And their focus was on a solution. Their
Yep.
focus was not how do we stop? Like the way I see him as a force is for moving things forward. Where the way I see a lot of other presidents and quite frankly, a lot of other people in their own like day to day behavior, they're always fighting against something. It's the war on this and that. No, we need to be pro American. We need to move things forward. We need to negotiate for action, for actual results, where they negotiate to pacify people. Here, let me drop $100 million in cash so you can stop bothering us, basically.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's their approach even in domestic um, policies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
True.
give this group let's give educational institutions more money. The
Hmm.
teachers unions don't want to work. Let's just up the ante and give them more money.
Yeah.
Have a clue about actually being educators and
Yeah.
actually educating our kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
idiotic uh, scholarly ways of thinking and impose common core, which there's nothing common about that core of school.
Hmm.
You give more money to unions that empowers them. Kids don't needle forward one bit in their education and their overall knowledge about how the world works. So you get the same nothingness. And then in order to fix that debacle, you just move them along because they're getting too old to be in the grade they're in. So now you got a bunch of graduates that don't even have sixth grade level reading or math comprehension. And you
Yeah. The
want them to
basic
succeed in
skills.
college? You want them
Yeah.
to succeed in life?
You want to
No, they're
give them
all
free college?
exactly. They're all protesting because they don't have a clue on how the works and they don't have a clue on what they could give to their city, their families, their own purpose in life. You totally disenfranchise this entire generation of kids
Hmm.
and warp their minds to thinking everyone who wants capitalism is a racist and somehow it's all white upward mobility that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
It's
It,
really sad.
it really is sad, and people want to rip, you know, Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, because she's all for school choice and she's all for the reforms that people on both sides that practically been begging for years, for decades, really. When you look at our education system, you dove into education now. The problem is, the unions every time, every time they strike, they get what they want. I remember when, well, I don't remember when, I remember reading about,
You're about to age yourself.
I remember reading about Ronald Reagan and the air traffic controllers, and
Mhm.
I used to tell them to go to hell.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need to do some of the same thing to these teachers unions.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Hmm.
Why do we have a teachers union?
To protect bad teachers.
But what's the purpose of having a union for teachers?
I guess
Isn't
for
aren't schools public? Like why do you need a union for teachers?
I guess to protect them for for wage increases and their benefits
But
and
what's the
so forth.
difference between any other sector?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, a
Like
lot of
why is education unionized?
yeah,
Why are educators unionized?
It's not like that in a lot of other countries. That's for sure.
It just doesn't make any sense.
People talk about, why the United States, as far as the global competitive index, has slid down the scale. Education, I think the teachers union is the main component of that. But in a lot of other countries, where they educate, like for China, example, China, and I hate to bring them in as an example because they're a communist country. There's no union. There's no union there. It's all private. They get huge bonuses for their kids' performance.
Right. Like,
It's an
wouldn't that
incentive
be
based
the
system. Yeah.
incentive?
Yeah. Spain, same thing in Spain, places like Spain. Like, there's no unions in most of the countries with the top schools. It's
Well,
it's
I
a, it's
heard
incentive.
I heard Trump actually address that, and I didn't realize in the conversation why it was brought up, but he was speaking and talking about how within the educational system, like our kids are being taught all this warped, social justice and
Hmm.
all this other stuff and then he need to get back to basics for them to learn. And I didn't know what the reference was that he was coming off of from that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard it.
Yeah. Well, I know that they were talking about first. I saw this. I saw the press conference you were talking about, or the town hall. First, they were talking about the diversity programs
Mhm.
that were taking place inside of the government. And a lot of those diversity programs were implemented by Obama and is based on the critical race theory, which is like, cultural Marxist theory. It's basically anti-white and anti-majority. If I had to sum it up in words. And so they teach all of these divisive tenets within the federal government, and Trump put a stop to that immediately once he found out. Um, in terms of education, along with Common Core, they started rolling out, some things based on the theory. And, now they're also looking to implement the 1619 project into a lot of public schools too, which is double
What
dangerous.
is I don't understand there. If you talk to any parent with a child, not a college age kid, because a lot of parents out there, when you mention anything about school, they go
Hmm.
straight to their 20-year-old that's about to graduate from college. It's like, we're not talking to you. When you grade school level, junior high school
Hmm.
level, when you talk to those parents, are waiting lists just to get their kids to test in or be picked out of a lottery just so that they could avoid going to the public school that they're zoned, and you get zoned. You can't even
Yep.
pick a school. You got to go to where is closest to your home.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember that movie Waiting for Superman? Well, that was us because when we lived in Newark, we had a little condo downtown Newark, New Jersey, right by the Prudential Center. Um, my 13-year-old, she was then at the time she was 4. We had to do a couple of lotteries, and she actually got into a good charter school. I did
Mhm.
not want her to go to the public schools there, and so we actually got into this school downtown called Gray's Charter. And I was praying for her to get into and if she
Yeah,
would have, once she got in, my son would have been like guaranteed placement there.
right.
So that's how that kind of works.
Yes.
So,
When I was grade school, I tested in this in the public school, the gifted talented program.
hmm.
So K through you could test into the gift program, which I did. And then going into junior high school, there was a group of parents, white parents, who got together and created a school within a public junior high school. So there was like 3 junior high schools in one building.
Oh
And
wow.
this group of parents, white, upper west side, very liberal, most of them, parents created a school, had the best instructors, Juilliard level instructors, professional acting coach for drama teachers, the principal, top notch educator. All of the people that were involved were from these, different diverse groups and high level educators or artists. And we had to test in to the school. And the same way you just said that if your daughter got in, your son would get in. So my cousins got in, then my younger brother got in. So we were all able to go to the school. Out of 200 kids, there were 20 minorities.
Wow.
20. Everyone else was all white. They had 20, and everybody tested in. All of the kids tested in.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily, we were able to take advantage of that. It wasn't known as a charter school,
Mm-hmm.
but that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what it was. We even had a New York City public bus routed to our school specifically just to pick up the kids from our school and take us across town.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's what these parents were able to do. So if they saw the effects of doing that, then what in the world is stopping them from doing that?
They just like control of the educated. It's it's more than just the unions. So there's three things. It's the unions. That's one. Two, liberals in general. They just like having control of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the unions in place. They're typically most of them work in education. So they're in charge of things like the curriculum, and what the kids learn. Um, and then also, you look at the teachers union, it's political because the teachers union, they raise tons of money for the Democratic Party. So that's three reasons right there to keep the teachers union in play and to give them more and more power as time goes, whether it's the NEA or whether it's your local teachers union.
Yeah. I mean, the as a parent, that thing that COVID has definitely showed is the uselessness of all of the politics and the unions in education.
Mhm.
I can sit at home with my daughters and teach them basics, life skills, and have them be much farther ahead in a 5, 6 month period of time than an entire school year with an educator, with a curriculum, with the, experience in teaching. Right there is
Mhm.
a problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely is a problem. And just to mirror that, we have. I mean, when you look at our federal workers, they have a union. They have unions there as well. Um, Private sector unions, I don't really have a problem with the private sector unions because they're not. It's not really affecting my tax dollars. They may affect my, like Verizon, for example. I have FiOS. Now I know Verizon has a huge union with the workers there. Okay, it's going to affect my cable bill, but I could choose another cable provider.
Right. You have a different option.
I have other options, but when it comes to things like the schools, I don't. I do, but I don't. I have limited options. Let's just say that.
All right, guys, if you are just joining us, this is Juan and Kathy Talk Podcast. Want to keep in touch, be sure to like and follow at Juan and Kathy Talk on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Post a comment, ask some questions, and we'll read it right on air. So, we're talking about a whole bunch of mango is going on this year.
Mm-hmm.
The presidential debates, COVID, education. But actually, what I want to talk to you about, Juan,
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what you think since race is playing such a big role. And it's not even anymore people who are middle of the road. It's like you're either extreme liberal or you're super conservative. Like these are our options right now. Um, do you think, as the media keeps on telling us, that the only option for liberals, minorities, blacks, and Spanish is the Democrat Party?
I don't know.
Because I see it so crazy on Facebook where if you, as a minority, say anything that may even to appreciating anything about Trump, the backlash from other people is just so vicious and mostly from black and people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's the thing, Kat. When it comes to minorities and the Democratic Party, whether it's on Facebook or not, social media or not, there's just an unhealthy tie there. It's an emotional tie. So it's not really, they're in a different space than black conservatives, right? Because black conservatives and Latino conservatives or libertarians, we see it. We see what's wrong, right? We see what's wrong on both sides, really. And we're able to like logically gather our facts and assess and continue to reassess our thoughts and our positions and how we feel about some of these issues. But and I would say mostly blacks, because a lot of Hispanics and Latinos vote Republican consistently, roughly 30% of them, which is great, which is outstanding if you ask me. But particularly, I would say with blacks, it's an emotional stronghold. A lot of the issues, they're not really thinking logically about the issues. It's pure emotion. And all it takes is some of that emotion will die down over time, but all it takes is a police shooting to kind of reignite that emotion, for example. Right? I remember when Michael Brown got shot by that police officer after he clearly violated the law, robbed the store, tried to attack the officer, get on top of him, and take his gun, and he got shot. The answer, Democratic politicians were going to the town. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson was going to the town. They had a voter registration tent outside the mural. Like, it's all emotion. Democrats continually whip their support base up into a frenzy to keep them into that emotional space, to
So I
keep
have
them.
another question.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not basing their, I agree, 100, like they're hyper emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But when you give them facts and other people, not white people speaking to them, but other minorities speaking to them,
Yeah.
it also does, they don't pause for a second to even consider anything that he's saying, or don't believe me, do your own research.
Mm-hmm.
Your own research and find the different points of views and then see them and say, no, I still believe what I believe. They
Yeah.
immediately go on the attack. So how
Yeah.
do you get information to these people, or are they just a lost cause at this point?
It takes a lot, man. It takes, for me, I was kind of against being a Democrat from the jump when I was about, I would say 20. I would say in my early 20s. When I was 18, my first vote was for Republican Senator John Warner when I lived in Virginia. Because I just thought it was crazy. I was going to it was voting was a big thing in my family. I was going to the poll. We all go, we used to go and vote together. We would all go and vote together. That's just how we did it. Me, my sister,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
mom, all of us it'd be like a motorcade of us going to the going to going to the voting booth. And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, who are y'all voting for? Because I didn't know who I was voting for when I went to the polls. But then my friend my best friend at the time, his father, he was a black guy. I know he was a Republican. He was a Republican, and he started pointing out issues to me, not telling me. He didn't tell me who to vote for, but we started talking about issues, and I saw my mom and the rest of my family, they were on the wrong side of those issues. So I voted Republican for that election. That was my first vote, I'll never forget. And I went to the poll and I'm like, man, I'm not voting for no Democrats based on the issues. If I'm gonna make it an issues vote, I'm like, you guys are crazy. You're gonna just throw your support away. So going back to your question, it's hard because it's so ingrained. At that time,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't ingrained in me. I had already been critical of like being a liberal and being a Democrat, even as a kid. So it wasn't ingrained in me, but for a lot of black Democrats, it's so ingrained. Yeah, and there's so many things that reinforce the culture. TV, music, look at Hollywood now. TV, music, the education system, the publications that you read, all of these things that are reinforcing that bias against anything conservative or Republican. So even in the church, to me, a lot of churches, I wouldn't say all churches, but I would say a lot of churches, they have given themselves over to cultural Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting the same message in the church too. And a lot of blacks go to church. So I would say it's just so ingrained. It really takes a person would have to like, it takes a person that constantly reevaluates what they believe.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
a lot of black Democrats don't do that. They don't reevaluate what they believe. And so therefore they can never be wrong.
Yes. Yeah. And they're so adamant about it that they're never going to change their mind.
Yeah.
They're never doing it because then they'd have to admit that all along they were wrong. And
Yeah.
that's not something that they're willing to do because they were right the whole time. So you're going to
Yeah.
continue being wrong to prove that you are always right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's interesting. It's
It's
interesting because
insane.
they fight in a way and they speak in a way that says that they want change. We want these things to change. We want these
Yeah.
things to change. We got to, you know, this stuff. And the way to change it is to get, but they fail to acknowledge all the money that has gone into the communities never change. And they never change because they keep on electing the same people with the same mindset and the same approach. So you
Mm.
keep getting the same output and they will fight for that same output. I have had people on who know me for years and can see my points of view have definitely changed. And along with that,
Mhm.
my life changed.
Yeah.
And I could show them but they still will fight for what they have. Like
Mhm.
you are currently living in the projects. I grew up in the projects. I know exactly what that is. The projects. I'm telling you, I'm showing you through my own behavior
Mhm.
how to get out of that situation.
Mhm.
But they will fight for it, fight to stay there, fight
Yeah.
to stay who they are.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes no sense. It
Yeah.
makes
It's
no sense.
it's funny because like I know people that same way, that whole project thinking and whatnot, and the mentality is I'd rather hold on to this cheap rent than to go out there and sacrifice and try to do better and maybe struggle for a little while, get across the horizon to something that's even greater. And so
Exactly.
it's that type of mindset
Exactly.
stuck. Yeah.
Well, not only that, the other thing I equate it to like a soccer goal, right? You have
Mhm.
this big giant net and you could ball into the net and you could kick it anywhere in the net. It's still a goal.
Mhm.
But it seems like liberals and minorities mostly only want to hit a goal in one specific spot. And they keep hitting for that impossible spot that one spot and they feel like only if they get the soccer goal do they win. With the entire opportunity that they have to make gains and to win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
No, you're a racist. Like, oh, okay. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've been called a racist and a self-hater. I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Have you seen my pictures? Have you seen my work? Like, I'm not really the type of person to hate myself. Like, I be loving me some me. I don't
The thing.
know.
That's the thing with minorities too. It's like, you have a different opinion and all of a sudden because it's not this is what I tell people that disagree with me that I've known that I grew up with. I'm like, look, I just have an unpopular opinion. I don't say that it's wrong. I say it's unpopular because that's exactly what it is. It's easier to follow the crowd than to have that unpopular
Yes.
opinion.
Yes. And they don't see that though. They
Yeah.
don't recognize, like, you know what? It would be a lot easier for all of us minorities to just toe the line. It's so much simpler that way. It really, everybody will like you. You won't cause any waves. You're lockstep with the rest of the group. We could all be aesthetic, la la la.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. But it doesn't work like that.
And the issues are bigger than that. And
Right.
here's the thing: if this country goes socialist, it's minorities that are going to suffer the worst
And
because
always do.
and always do because you talk about lack. Look, we live in a capitalist country, right? One of the most freest countries in the world, and they're still talking about lack of resources, lack of opportunity, and all of that. What do you think is going to take place in a socialist country where the government doesn't just give a damn? It's all about equal distribution. It's all about equal misery. You think you're going to get a leg up in a socialist country where you can't openly and freely move and transact privately and raise capital and stuff like are you kidding me? So
Exactly.
it's too much at stake for them to think the way that they do, but for some reason they do. They're not worried about freedom. You need freedom. In order to be equal, you need freedom, right? Now in a free country, there's no such thing as equality. I'm no fool. I'm not naive. But to make yourself equal to the point to where you want to achieve your goals, your ambitions, to really pursue happiness, as it says in our founding documents, right? You need that freedom. You need capitalism. You need the
Exactly.
freedom to move around. You need your Second Amendment. You need your free speech. You need your right to privacy, right? So, but when you implement a socialist system, you throw all of that away. And so no one cares about the minority in the socialist system. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you summed up our crazy conversation in that what we really need is the freedom, not the output of equality, because
yeah,
that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist when you're born, you're not equal to your sisters, your brothers, and people in your own family. And when
yeah,
you die, you don't die equally to anybody else. That
yeah.
is the journey of life. It's not for equality, it's for you to find your purpose, build your family if that's what you want to do, find the thing that is going to make you happy, and to continue being able to pursue that. And the only place where you actually have the freedom to pursue even your own ignorance, if that's what you want, is the States. There's
Mm,
no other country but here. And to change the way we have our system set up to look like other countries, it would be to your own detriment, white, black, blue, brown, wherever you come from. You just will be on the losing end because
mm,
then you have controllers and the population that gets controlled
mm-hmm.
as opposed to the way we have it now. So, thank you all for joining us. Be sure to keep in touch on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Juan and Kathy Talk Podcast. Thank you so much. Post some comments. Let us know what you think. Next time, say bye, Juan.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
This is The Cure.